Hello, a very warm welcome here from the Marathon Studios in Tallinn, Estonia. Welcome at our session called Democratic Innovations in Estonia, Finland, Citizens' Initiatives and Citizens' Assemblies. This discussion is part of the Open Government Week 2024 and is organized by the Estonian Cooperation Assembly together with the DD Foundation, DD Center for Democracy. My name is Bart Kozain. I'm the founder of the Estonian Dialogue Academy and your host for today. Our session is divided in three parts. First, we will talk about lessons learned from democratic innovations in Finland and in Estonia, and we will focus on citizen initiatives and citizens' assemblies. Second, we will discuss challenges and dilemmas in the near future. And third, we will look at the long term and also dream out loud. And for us here, we have three very inspiring guests in the studio. They are all distinguished experts in citizens' initiatives, citizens' participation, and deliberative democracy. And first, next to me here, Oni Pekonen. He is a specialist on democracy and participation at the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra. He is a developer and researcher specialized in the institutions, practices, and history of democracy and public governance. And next to Oni, we have Tele Peck. Welcome as well. She's a social change consultant at the DD Center for Democracy here in Estonia and a practitioner of deliberative democracy. And she has been involved in opening up governances on state and local level for the last 15 years. And our third guest on the other side of me here, Maria-Leena Saar, also a very warm welcome to you. She's an expert at the Estonian Cooperation Assembly. She has been actively involved in shaping the open digital society since 2015, working on topics such as participatory democracy and open data. And of course, we are very welcome and very happy that you are following our discussion here. And please do give your thoughts, give your comments. If you're following this in Facebook or in YouTube, you can use the chat there. And we will try to incorporate your comments, your feedback in our discussion. And maybe as a little exercise, let's try just fill in the place where you're from in the chat. As a little warm-up, and so we can also see from each other from which parts of the world people are following our session here. If we talk about democratic innovations in Estonia and Finland, first question for you, Maria-Leena. Why do you think now it's important that we talk about these two subjects?
Well, yes, why we are here. We were working with Oni on this report on citizen initiatives. Mm-hmm. And what we already know that this is institutionalized democratic practice in both countries. Also, in the same time, we have the innovation like citizen assemblies, what we experience also in Estonia and in Finland. Mm-hmm. And why we called this discussion here today is that in the near future, those innovations coexist somehow in the future. And from my personal perspective, as I manage Citizen Initiative Portal in Cooperation mm-hmm. Assembly, for making development of these processes, I need to understand more how those initiatives in the future will coexist and what happens in the other countries. This mutual learning is essential actually to design and develop those democratic initiatives.
Yeah, so talking about citizen initiatives and citizens' assemblies, maybe also to clarify a little bit, how do we define these two? Also a question to the other guests. What is a citizen initiative and how is it different from a citizen assembly? Oni, maybe?
Yeah, I can start with the citizens' initiative maybe, and you can fill in with mm-hmm. the citizens' assembly. Basically, what we focused in the report, we focused on national citizens' initiatives. Mm-hmm. So, with this instrument, like defined number of statements of support mm-hmm. for an initiative will be collected from the citizens, and after they reach a certain threshold, they will enter the parliament for parliamentary deliberation.
Okay, so these are initiatives directed at the parliament?
Yes. For example, in the Finnish case, the Finnish Citizens Initiative, it focuses on legislation. So it has to be either legislative bill or a proposal to start drafting legislation.
Yeah.
And then the Parliament has the final power to decide what will actually happen with these initiatives.
Okay.
But that's the basic idea.
So it's also good to clarify that, like, maybe sometimes people also think about citizen initiatives on a local scale, something happening in your neighborhood, or
Yes.
something you're involved in getting rid of cars in your street. But we're talking now about national level.
Yeah, our report focuses on the national, although we have, for example, in Finland, we have the regional county level initiatives and also local level. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. And you're talking about a report. Before we come to citizen assemblies, we will come to this report. It's here. It's very interesting to read. We will come to that. But citizens assemblies, what are they for people who have heard it but don't know the details so well?
Yeah, citizen assemblies are a format of collective decision making. They are a deliberative democracy kind of branch. And for me, they are blueprint for kind of nowadays policy making. So a representative group of citizens comes together, gets the knowledge from the best scientists, experts on the topic that's on deliberation. They hear the stakeholders who are involved, like different pros and cons of the matter, and they discuss, deliberate, and they make a consensus. Basically, they decide on consensus, and they propose usually to the public sector, be it state level, local level, regional level, what needs to be done. So they can be used as crisis time policy making, like decision making format, or they can be used as very profound kind of way how to engage. It's not about the scale, more citizens, it's about the quality basically. And through the representative sample, the legitimacy comes also. But they can be used also for very long term, possibly very polarizing topics. So they are, according to Professor Graham Smith, they are the most impactful democratic innovations nowadays. And they are really worldwide spread, and in the open government community also, like almost everybody knows what they are.
Yeah, and it also means people physically coming together.
Either physically or virtually.
Or virtually, yeah.
But the digital aspect is like as a supporting infrastructure, I would say there. Whereas in citizen assembly, citizen initiatives, this is more of an example of a digital democracy, I would say, although I think in Finland as well and in Estonia, you can still propose the signatures on paper. That's also allowed, that's parallel, but it's more used, it's more common as an example of a digital democracy.
Yeah, so if we talk about citizen initiatives, citizen assemblies, they are both forms of where, let's say, citizens, ordinary people, try to influence policy making, try to influence decisions often made by elected politicians, and it's about also, when we will come to that later, how, let's say, what sometimes is called like a deliberative or participatory democracy and representative democracy, how these two are intertwined. And that can be different in both examples, but I'm very curious to hear from you. If we take a look, we go a bit back in history, but not too far. I think, how far do we go? 2012? Oni?
Yeah, in the case of
kind of 2012, let's say approximately a decade, because part of this session, it's important for you to know, and you will, maybe you already have seen this report or get access afterwards. You've both worked on a report like this one, looking specifically at the citizens' initiatives, the process, how it started, how it works in Finland and in Estonia. But let's zoom in a little bit on that. If you think about, before we go in details of the report, this like is a form of, Taylor was telling about it, like democratic innovation. And if we think now, maybe something that has been inspiring you over the last decade, you said that citizen assemblies is, in your perspective, one of the most important innovations in democracy. If you think about how democracy is developing both in Finland and in Estonia, what is something that is really kind of inspiring you, gives you like hope, positive, resonates in a positive way with you? Maybe can you share an observation?
Yeah, I think there are many interesting things actually happening in the field of democratic innovation in Finland. But if I have to choose one, I would say that, that finally kind of like the deliberative wave, I have to say, is kind of like landing on a new scale in Finland. Like we have a, well, depending where you compare, but relatively long history with the deliberative mini-publics and citizens' assemblies. Like 2006, I believe, was the first mini-public organized in Finland. But the kind of the basic know-how and about citizens' assemblies has focused in universities in Finland. So citizens' assemblies have been organized as part of research projects. They have had some linkage to decision-making processes, but they have been mostly organized for academic research and academic motivations.
Yeah, so more in the scientific field.
Exactly, like what is deliberation, how it's actually changing views and people and so on. But nowadays, like in the past few years, we have had a, well, I would say explosion, but let's say a wave at least of new citizens' assemblies, and also this kind of like understanding and capacities to organize citizens' assembly have spread outside the universities as well. And for example, our organization, we are currently funding like 12 different citizens' assemblies on the different levels of government in Finland. And few cases like the city of Turku is planning to institutionalize, have a permanent citizens' assembly as part of their policy making.
On the local level?
Yes, yes, city level, yeah. And then we had another example, we had a quite massive citizens' parliament organized last November, where more than 600 citizens participated to discuss 4 different citizens' initiatives actually. Okay,
great. So these are a few examples.
Yeah, of the wave that is building. Yeah. And I'm quite optimistic, but I'm interested to see and also to discuss what would be the next phase after this kind of like wide range of topics and experiments.
Yeah, important. Thanks. And we will come to that absolutely. Maija-Leena, if you think about Estonia and the Estonian democracy developing, what is inspiring you here?
Well, for me, it was really inspiring that we collected last year the same amount of digital votes like we collected in parliamentary elections. And it was getting quite unnoticed.
And you collected them for?
For different initiatives. Okay. So we don't know how much people, because one person can vote for many initiatives. And then this thing was really getting me thinking that we have seen a lot of like academic tests, a lot of those like different ways of exploring this field. But now we are here on something bigger, you know, like the society really starts to adapt this innovation. What for some people is very old thing already. Actually, for local level, we had it already from '93. But because there was no digital platform, we don't have very good overview of that practice. And it seems that feedback loop in the society was not closed. Now on the parliamentary level, we closed the feedback loop. We have transparency of the process, proceedings of the parliament, the information exchange is really fast. And now this vast popularity and plus emerging citizen assemblies, this definitely gives me a lot of inspiration because those things can be connected. As we were watching how those initiatives actually are shaping the society, what could be the impact, in which way to think about it, then we see that citizen initiatives are very good discussion spotlight creators. You know, they really bring topics up what maybe are too innovative before, but if they get very big support, then also mainstream politicians will take them over. And that's very big impact. There was nothing like that before. And this is having a very interesting impact to Estonian politics in general. So I'm really watching around and seeing like what is now the next step and how the citizen assembly will enter into that picture.
Yeah, sounds very good. And just to clarify, you said at the beginning, with the platform that you operate for citizen initiatives, there were as many votes supporting different plans as for the elections?
Yes, digital votes. Yeah. So it means like 300,000 plus. In Estonian electorate is something like 1 million.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, in Estonia you can vote for national other elections digitally, and this amount of votes, people also vote on paper, of course, is the same or almost the same?
It's the same.
It's the same.
Legally, it's exactly the same. That like the digital vote and the paper vote on paper in the general elections and also on the portal is exactly the same.
Okay, great.
It's unique.
Yeah. Before we go to the report, briefly, Taylor, you were already telling about citizen assemblies. Is there another development you see in Estonian democracy, or maybe in you live here in Tallinn, the studio we're sitting is not so far from your home. Are there developments that you see that are inspiring you?
I would stick to our topic today still.
Yeah.
At the Center for Democracy, we focus on ecosystem of democracy innovations, which means we map the actors in different phases, like knowledge-based innovation, right? So it starts with basic science, applied science, then validation of these new ideas in public discussions or other forms of basically validation, then testing, piloting these ideas, which can be before validation also, and then institutionalization. And from that point of view, and we just recently mapped the actors also in the field, and we, as expected, we discovered many bottlenecks there, like missing actors or like not too many responsibilities in the institutionalization phase. But in that respect, the citizen initiative right that actually came 10 years ago from a citizen assembly, the first nationwide, like national level citizen assembly in Estonia that had more topics there. Like it was about citizen participation, over politicization of public life, and also about elections, not only electoral reform, but also like kind of surrounding topics. So the citizen initiative right emerged from that process as a very precise, you can show that this is one of the direct results that came out of that assembly. And 7 years ago, I was also part of setting up the digital infrastructure of that. In that sense, it's a great and one of the few examples of democratic innovations in Estonia that has been kind of integrated into the public governance system. And in that sense, for citizen assemblies, although they are impactful, they're not institutionalized worldwide. There are a few examples, but too rare still. It's too rare. So we're looking for this can be as an example of like how to institutionalize, whether through a legislative system or other ways. But I'm also really happy about the fact that Graham Smith, my favorite professor of politics from UK, in his book Democratic Innovations, he also covers different innovations that widen or deepen the citizen engagement in political decision making. And he also analyzes digital participation or digital platforms. And usually the promise of them is always like, yes, we will engage masses and we will reach out to marginalized groups. But they rarely fulfill this promise. But in that sense, rahvaalgatus.ee, the enabling platform in Estonia, has done that. Like 7 years ago, it was in the OGP plan of Estonia, and just like, okay, set up the platform so that people have somewhere to actually initiate the problems and give signatures. But now it's so much more. So in that sense, it's also complementing the e-Estonia wonder narrative by the previously missing piece from the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think that's also an important notion, because if you look around at all kinds of digital platforms in Europe or also here in Finland and Estonia, then they're often presented with a lot of hope, so to say, hope that people will go there, that it will support, but then at some point it disappears, or people don't really use it as a way of co-create with each other, or they don't discuss. So I think that's a very good moment now to start looking at like the specific practice both in Finland and in Estonia, because 2012, 2014, if I'm right, the start of platform in Estonia, 2012 in Finland, and you thought that this would be a good moment to like look back and look critically at how both platforms, how they function, what are things that they have in common, where they differ. Maria-Leena, why was this a good moment, you think, for you? You said, okay, let's collaborate, as Estonian Cooperation Assembly, together with Sitra and also with the Institute of Baltic Studies, to make a good look at how we work?
Well, first of all, the right was born 2014. The platform was coming 2 years later, in Estonian case, for people who want to know the facts. But in the report, it's all detailed and linked. The main thing is to watch processes separately. You have process, what is in the law. Then you have the common practice, and then you have different infrastructures supporting it. What I think is very important, the overall readiness of the country to use digital tools. So I don't believe in the miracle platform if the society is not ready for that, or a standalone platform. You need to have digital identity in place, you need to have open data developments in place, but today I would not like to go in the details of technology right away. But what we did right is that we made really light level prototype to start testing out. So it was very simple function what this portal had from the beginning. Make your text, collect your signatures and send to the parliament. And it was making the life easier for the people also in the parliament. Not at the beginning, but after a few years, we got open data done. And all the proceeding information is coming to all the audience without no interference of any administrative cost of hours of the people who are working on parliaments. So it's all automatic.
So you say Estonia as a country has a strong digital infrastructure that made it possible to implement such a...
So different organization has little gears, and then you have one user interface, what this kind of putting them all together. This is the overall logic here.
Yeah, so I, as a citizen of Estonia, I'm not an Estonian, but I formally live here. I can start an idea, put it on the platform, write the text, start collecting supporters. They can sign it digitally. And there is, at some point, if I collect enough people, it will be sent to the parliament.
Okay, and so that's only one button you have to click for that.
One button.
Or like you have the EID, it means that you have the user, you have the right of signing. You don't need any extra procedures there. It's just like do it.
Yeah, great. And in Finland?
I could start. We probably had a bit of different, partly different motivation and reasons for doing the actual writing the paper and doing the very detailed kind of like process analysis and history outlook and so on. But in Finland, we are in a sense in a good situation that our citizens' initiative system, it's more or less regularly assessed and reviewed. And currently, it was said in the recent current government program that the participation rights of the citizens will be reviewed by a parliamentary group, basically, and there's an expert group as well. And they will look into the development needs also of this citizens' initiative system in Finland. And we wanted to feed in some ideas for that discussion, and we thought that the Estonian case is very interesting in the sense that especially if we look at from the citizens' point of view, like from a very citizen-centered point of view, there are many aspects which I think are very good in the Estonian initiative system. For example, we also suggested to the parliamentary group that what we should learn from Estonia is that we should offer a single window of view, for example, for citizens to follow the whole parliamentary process of citizens' initiatives. And also, compared to Finland, the Estonian system has more strict time limits for the parliament actually to process and deliberate on these citizens' initiatives. So there are several aspects that we thought that might be useful to learn from Estonia and suggest in Finland. So that was kind of our main motivation. And more on the technical side, there's also a platform reform about to start in Finland. There will be a new level of county level initiatives, and they will create a new platform for it. And at a later phase, if they have resources, the government has resources, all these initiatives will be brought to the same platform. So we also wanted to look at the, compare and have a look at the Estonian infrastructure and
Well, I would add on here that what is very good in Finland is that they have a constant discussion about the right. In Estonia it was made, and now we have 10 years silence, and obviously the world is different now, and the masses what are using this right in Estonia. So there are questions like the Estonian level to enter to the parliament discussion is 1,000 signature only.
Yeah.
So, and we think that the process what follows after is very good balanced with this 1,000.
So it means that if someone starts an initiative and starts collecting signatures, when you have reached 1,000 supporters, your initiative is sent to the parliament.
Yes, and discussed by a committee.
So not only sent, they also have to discuss it.
They have to.
Okay.
But what we do when there's 20 times more signatures?
Yeah.
Is it something else or not? We do not have this discussion right now. I have some opinions, but I don't go there right now. But we need discussion in the society.
Yeah.
Or within the parliament.
Or in the parliament, yeah. And before we go a bit more further in like also this let's say formal process from an initiative to parliament, just to understand a little bit like more, there are many things that are in the basic idea are the same, but there are some striking differences. You said in Estonia you need 10,000 signatures. How many do you need in?
In Finland it's currently 50,000.
50,000.
So it's 50 times more.
50 times more. Yeah.
Of course, the population is a bit different.
Yeah.
Finland is 5.5 million. Estonia is at 1.3.
Yeah. But it's
different. But still, the scale is very different.
And the percentage is also different.
Yeah.
It's part of the population. Yeah. A second difference, you've also already mentioned it, is that so after 1,000 signatures in Estonia, the parliament has to discuss this. How does it work in Finland?
In practice, on a principle level, the parliament has the obligation to process it. But in fact, the parliament has a lot of leeway, like how to process it, and or let's say in what kind of a time frame to process it. For example, in Finland, the parliament is a bit technical. I like procedures, but still, like the only time kind of like limit is that it is suggested that the committee in parliament should inform the initiators what it will do with the initiative. In the plan to do, but that's all. For example, there's no like fixed schedule for parliamentary process of citizens' initiatives, and if the initiative is not processed at the end of the parliamentary term, it will lapse. So although you collect 50,000 signature and you submit it to the parliament, there's no guarantee that the parliament will actually process it.
Okay. Yeah.
On a legal.
And the huge difference is also that in Finland, basically draft act is required, whereas in Estonia it's more of a proposal or an idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. I think that is very important, not to draw conclusions only watching the numbers.
Yes.
You need to collect the requirements. It's all in different countries. It's completely different. I hope in our audience are also people from different countries who think now about their right of making citizen initiatives. It can be completely third version. And what was the most interesting point was actually how those differences are shaping this practice in the society. And if you have it already 10 years, you can start to see like how the change is happening. We cannot watch only 5 years, because 5 years is just a short time frame for cultural change. 10 years, you already start to see something. Those processes are very long. In Estonia, might happen like 1 to 2 years before they end somewhere. So how we can see what is the end if we still have half of the processes in the middle. So 10 years history gives first learning points.
Yeah, and you say also like because the practice in both countries is different, it's also the tool, so to say, is used in a different way. One striking difference I also read, you already mentioned a little bit. So in Finland, if as a citizen initiative on national scale, you have to propose either a new law or to want to change an existing law. That's
yeah, basically, like the initiative has to be either like a legislative bill, so a ready-made law with justifications, or a proposal to start actually drafting a law. With the justification. So those are the. It has to. So compared to Estonia, the Finnish format of the CI is very kind of like let's say stiff.
And what kind of effect has
very legal?
Yes.
What kind of effect has that, or did you see in the types of initiatives? I mean, I don't know how to write a law.
Yes.
But I have ideas about changes in society.
Yeah. Basically, in order to, especially when we talk about, well, with the both forms, but especially when we talk about the legislative bill, you have to know law. You have to know law. You have to have special skills in law drafting and so on.
And does it mean
in order to build a successful initiative, basically?
Yeah. But does it then mean, like, if you want to participate with an initiative, you have to find some expert in your group that can help you?
Yes.
And then.
Yeah. Well, basically, like. Most of the successful Finnish initiatives has been this kind of like a broad campaign with experts and wide civil society participation behind them. So I would say like what do you call regular Joe or whoever start like, I have an idea for a law, I will start drafting it. And if you submit it to the system, I'm pretty, no offense to the regular Joe, but it's quite certain that it won't be passed in parliament.
Okay, yeah.
Although that they are this kind of like, well, in Finland there's been like during this period there has been like more than 1,500 initiatives started, initiated, and then a bit more than 70 of them have entered the parliament, and only 7 of them have been actually approved or approved as amended. So that's not much. But at the same time, like many of these, actually I think like around 1/5 of the initiatives that have been processed in parliament, there have been some resolutions approved in parliament. So MPs have proposed a resolution and then the parliament has approved them. And these kind of resolutions might contain these kind of demands, for example, for the government to start investigating a topic by creating an expert group or something like this. So this kind of the goals of the initiative could be like put forward in other ways than also only by either approving or rejecting this proposal.
Yeah, so you're saying it's not only like lawmaking in direct line, it's also the initiatives inspire politicians to propose things like on their own behalf.
Exactly, and it's like agenda initiative, so it has also only the not only the legal impact on legislation, but this kind of like broader on public debate. And
sorry, one question only. Didn't the marriage equality law actually appear from the citizen initiative?
Yes, that's one example.
Okay, so like a topic which is important in society has.
Yeah, and also these kind of topics like outside the government programs, and so in this kind of can be said that it's quite successful tools. But otherwise would have not entered the parliamentary agenda.
Yeah. Just one detail from the Estonian practice. So if initiative reaches the parliament with at least 1,000 signatures, then I was seeing in the report like the parliament has more options to respond. It can either say we need a bill, but it can also say government, you have to do something, or another institute has to respond. How does that work in practice?
Well, we are going now in the very interesting unexplored area, to say the least. Like we do not have too much restrictions on the initiatives themselves. We do not have very precise procedure in the parliament. What is precise is the time window, but it's very good. But the toolbox, what the parliamentary committee they have for solving the issue, it's so wide that it's very complicated to generalize. And unfortunately, we do not have that academic work what Finland does. We do not have good research actually analyzing different factors or sentiments of Estonian society, how they feel this right is actually improving our democracy. So So we have observations, but very few knowledge. So I'm very modest with numbers. Of course, we are screening the whole practice, and we see that the direct legislative change is rare, even if people are hoping for that. But
yeah, because when your initiative is sent to Parliament, it also gives hope to people.
Yeah.
The Parliament will talk about it, but then if the Parliament, like in Finland, it's either a new law or it's nothing.
Or
starting and drafting a new law. In Estonia, the Parliament is more free to say, yeah, it's not our business or government.
Yeah, but also the initiative, they maybe only describe the problem. The solution needs still to be worked out. And who is working on a solution? Maybe the problem is that big that 6 months in the committee is not enough to solve this kind of complicated problem. And it can happen that the committee, when the political ground is right, is starting processes what are starting to address the problem.
Yeah.
But still, then we don't count it as a legislative change. Then this is this indirect policy impact, what should be researched more to give people the feedback and also to give credit to the politicians and officials who are taking those initiatives seriously. At the moment, we just don't know too much about that.
Yeah,
but we definitely see that there are examples and cases on the report. We were bringing them out so everybody interested can read them and go deeper into them. So it's all there and you can see the impact, but it's not yet formalized.
Yeah, so you're also saying that we shouldn't underestimate, let's say, the agenda setting power of the initiative, even though it doesn't lead to an amended law or like a change in direct policy making.
Well, one very interesting observation now what I have seen is like those initiatives what are coming like for something and against something. The topic is same. And here I'm always thinking like that is actually the great ground for a citizen assembly to solve.
Yeah.
They try to merge those things in the parliamentary committees, but then, you know, they have to invent the procedures because nobody did it before.
Yeah, and can you give a few examples, like what kind of subjects do you see popping up in the different citizen initiatives?
Yeah, well, on a general level, I think like environmental issues, animal rights, criminal punishments, workings of the parliament or the government, these kind of topics. Recently, like fuel taxation, for example, euthanasia, legalizing of cannabis. It's like the variety of the topics is very wide. And in a sense, if you look at it as a kind of a participation tool, there's like I think like in the beginning, like often this kind of democratic innovation, they sometimes give this is like green left stuff. But if you look, for example, at the citizens initiatives, there's like something for everyone. Like so I can say in that sense. Yeah.
So it's kind of representing also the broader, like representing the broader like political scope in the country.
And it has been also studied in Finland, like why it can be said as a success story that they have like done surveys who actually use the instrument, and it's a very wide range of people. And also it has managed to activate especially young people who usually with lower level of education who doesn't participate otherwise, for example, in elections or something. So it has managed to kind of like activate new groups of people and fight political alienation or something like that.
Yeah, before I go to Taylor, just briefly, like, topics that pop up in the Estonian platform?
Well, the same thing. We have all the spectrum, left, right, modest, extreme, everything is there. What we are really happy about it, and very few data what we have, the young people are there and active. So definitely they correspond. And what is different in Estonia is that we can have also what we tell so-called digital demonstrations. So their purpose is not draft a law. They are just against or pro something. In Finnish platform, those cannot exist because you need a draft law or proposal. Yeah. In Estonia, you can just tell, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then it collects.
Specific topic.
Yeah.
Like more like a general interest group or some.
Yeah, it's a kind of reaction to some outside event or controversial decision. And we are really happy that they are there. If we would not give that safe digital space, they would be somewhere else, those people. So that's also the function of Estonian right.
And Teele, if you are observing like the practice in both countries, like we talked about differences and similarities, like what strikes you in this development and seeing that it's becoming more popular, young people are participating in such citizens' initiatives?
Basically what I mentioned already, that one good example of digital democracy that's fulfilling its promise, but then again also the thing that even if it's institutionalized, it still needs to be continued developing. Like, it doesn't mean that now it's set, we're all fine with it, because our polycrisis environment surrounding life around us is changing so rapidly, and the right needs to be constantly developed, or then taken these lessons and all that, but also so many journalists, so many researchers, so many strategic communication leads at the government office can take this information, this data, the topics and everything, and use it for social cohesion.
And would you say that's also like a call to make more use of it, or do you already see that in society?
I know that Marilena has been advocating for that in our government office and other places. I don't know if it's used well enough yet. I have the feeling not. There's more potential.
We need more research. We have a lot of ideas and hypotheses, but we need to back it up with other. We cannot be the only source. I would tell that.
Yeah.
And I really like what Finland did. I was observing the citizen parliament last autumn or November.
Yeah.
It's like winter already. Like combining the citizen initiatives, combining citizen assemblies, and also testing virtual assemblies with human moderation, virtual assemblies with AI moderation, and physical assembly with human moderation. So it was like a huge experiment, mostly scientific, like backed up with money from research. But then again, it was for Finnish parliament, it was also like input, like this is the popular vote, or like this is what the representative sample of Finnish population thinks about these issues, and like
especially when giving the information about them, not just like a
true.
regular survey, like what do you think?
True learning, not a referendum, yes or no, but learning, deliberating, and then weighing, and then deciding. So giving that kind of mandate, public mandate. So that was really cool example, because I don't know that many from the world, but you can suggest us if there are these kind of combinations.
Okay, so far like about some details of the report and your findings comparing citizens' initiatives in Finland and Estonia. Let's zoom out a little bit now and also take the citizen assemblies again into account. And I see some questions that have been coming in the chat, so thanks a lot for them, but please keep them coming. Let's try to take two into the discussion. I'm just reading, what are some of the risks looking towards the future with regards to deliberative democracy? It was mentioned there is a deliberative wave. Can this wave also disappear?
You start.
What's your experience here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We seem to have the momentum, right? And so on, the wave is building. But as I said in the beginning, what next? How to actually make them something more than a trend, or maybe passing trend, or something like institutionalization would be one aspect, and how to get the most out of it in the future, that they will also, I would say, not necessarily serve, but also help the representative democracy system and the decision makers. To point, kind of like make the value of the instrument or innovation relevant and apparent for everyone. That is.
Teele?
I can build up, and we are advocates of deliberative democracy, so we don't see any risks. No, we see some risks, but I see more benefits than risks. Some risks are maybe hijacking of the format or the name, the title, just by maybe some policymakers naming some processes citizen assemblies that are not, that don't follow the international standards.
Because they are not inclusive enough or not...
Or they don't involve the random sample.
They don't involve...
But just those who appear to the meeting, for example. But I think I see more benefits, and especially if these mini-publics are not one-off events, but if they are either regular, permanent or institutionalized, then they kind of... promise is being fulfilled, and the promise, one of the biggest promise, that why we also work on this, and we are connected to the global development community, like Democracy and R&D and OECD Network, and TNOCA, the Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies, and FIDE, Federation for Innovating Democracy in Europe, many networks around that deliberative democracy, which I'm really happy about, is that they if you want, they make representation great again. So in the times when people don't recognize their needs and desires in official decisions, in that kind of circumstances, deliberative mini-publics give them or change the mode of representation. They bring citizens as a representative group to the core. But still, the decision-making power or the fulfillment, implementation of these recommendations from any assembly usually still goes to the public sector. And I see there second question already, what if local citizens' assemblies could be done without local government and or involvement, just grassroots level? And yes, of course, there is that trend also. But here in Estonia, with the last 4 years, we've organized 3 climate citizen assemblies, on 2 on local level, 1 on regional. Plus there was this national assembly on 10 years ago, and we are nudging for more assemblies, but not for the sake of organizing them, but for the sake of embedding them into the system. And our goal is actually to innovate public sector. So this is why we can't do it without the public sector, and we see that this kind of one of the responsibilities, very much aligned to open government principles, is that the public sector also needs to innovate itself, and this is the task of the public sector. So in a way, with citizen assemblies or climate assemblies, we kind of make that realization either in local government or in the state government. And we show that, hey, if you trust people, if you are open enough, if you give this decision-making power away, in a way, but you build the infrastructure, the follow-up mechanism for like how to get the control back, then this can lead to much less polarization, much more citizen trust, community building, climate awareness is raising, and all those things.
So you're saying with these democratic innovations, it's really crucial that, let's say, it's not put as next to the government system or as an alternative, but it really has to work with both civil servants, with politicians, and we will talk more about that. But I saw you also both wanted to briefly comment.
Yeah. Like at Sitra, we work closely with public government, basically. Kind of like one of our project aims was that to kind of build this connection to political process and political decision-making process. So I also look this a bit from the public governance and decision-making point of view, and I think that there's a true risk in the fact that what we often hear is that this is very kind of costly and time-consuming, and it needs much more resources, where we would like to just tap the citizen participation part. And we kind of are a bit forced at Sitra also to look into this, whether it would be possible how to build this a bit more cost efficient, perhaps a bit more light version, without actually giving up too much on the core principles of deliberative citizens assemblies. And I think, especially when working with decision making and public government, this is kind of one of the core questions, how to actually manage this. And there might be some aspects on technological development and so on sortition phase and so on to make it smoother.
Yeah, because like before Maria-Lena, then some of these practices of citizens' assemblies, they can be very intense. People having coming together for multiple weekends, or if you take a citizen initiative, you have to consult to draft a law that people like doing all these things next to their families and their day jobs. At this point. But you also wanted to briefly comment.
Well, the brief comment here is what is the common point between CIs and CAs is that the role of politician is changing. So if the CIs are coming in, or the proposal from CIs, not citizen initiatives and citizen assemblies, like we mix them up. So in the both ways, a politician needs to know what to do with them. And that at the moment, I feel that we need to support also politicians to moderate different processes, but that's so early discussion still. But that we see that there is an action point.
Because that's interesting. Like in some countries or some discussions, you hear people saying, "Yeah, but let's say representative democracy, that's something from the past, and we're going to innovate, and we won't need politicians anymore." At the same time, looking at the practice, you see that still, let's say, the way that we hold elections is an important part of how we keep democracies fair and open. So the challenge of how to bring them together. And so you bring in the aspect of the role of politicians. Another aspect here, which we see talking about is, and we talk about citizens' assembly, citizens' initiatives. Are there examples that you see where these two forms either become part of one process, where the one initiates the other? You were telling about Estonia, well, starting from a citizen assembly leading to a platform for citizens' initiatives. Do you see other examples? And maybe one extra note, what's also interesting that like maybe in the past sometimes you saw that like these democratic innovations in participation and deliberation were sometimes framed as progressive or leftish. But now, like Estonia and Finland is proving with citizens' initiatives and assemblies that it's able to like bring together like the whole political spectrum. In a sense that would that also give like kind of hope or a good starting point for saying how can we continue this innovation with both forms?
Yeah, I think like it's important to have the discussion with the political decision makers about there's always the question popping on how to convince and how to inspire. It's one of the big challenges for us as well. And I think like getting the, let's say, decision makers involved in the processes, observing, let them see what is actually happening, that the citizens can actually have a good deliberation and constructive discussion, and the process will lead something that will actually help their work as well. So like building these kind of like moments and occasions, I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, because I heard from the last citizen assembly here in Tallinn in Estonia, there were also civil servants walking around and they were like very happily surprised. Well, what did you see there?
Yeah, and we interviewed them. We did a proper kind of immediate impact analysis of the Tallinn Assembly that took place last year, October and November, on climate issues. And the biggest impact we can say, always there's impact on participants, but Tallinners are very demanding. So just last week, Tallinn city government kind of responded to the proposals, and citizens were like, right, this is the like processing part. We want to see results, and we want to keep on having a dialogue actually. And we will come together in a year's time to check like what has been done. And if you need any help, we're here, you know. In that sense, I was like, yeah, whoa, fantastic. Like we didn't expect that outcome. But then through the interviews of those officials, or public servants, like politicians and officials for me are public servants altogether, those who were involved in the co-organizing of the assembly and those who were observing there or had some like minor role, we interviewed around 8 public servants, and yeah, their kind of understanding of citizen engagement widened a lot. their trust towards citizens. Also, they saw that, wow, citizens can be that civilized, so constructive, so committed to solve the issues that actually, touch their living environment, are their everyday life.
And where does their like previous negative connotation then come from?
From the, I don't know, formal, from the formal engagement processes, the old-fashioned like public consultation or the detailed plan or general plan, like publications and this kind of public events that are not discussion. They say like, okay, we will do this, do you like it or not? Usually it's like that. It's improving here as well, and there are great examples around the world how to do it, not how to not do it.
But that's where we come from.
Yeah. And then one official from Tallinn said actually that, wow, the Citizen Assembly is actually like a therapy for those public servants who are either burnt out through these old-fashioned engagements or disappointed because citizens are so negative and attacking and all that. But and in that sense, it's like opening the eyes. And we with Tallinn Assembly also we invited a lot of observers also from the city council, and quite many came also. And that was like that's the best experience when you are there and see it. Instead, instead me kind of promoting it. This is such a great format. Please do it more often.
Showing some PowerPoint.
So that works really well, and that's why we need to put effort and time. Although we don't have time, climate, biodiversity, all that, to actually deliver these processes, to get this to give the kind of lived experience.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And Maria-Leena, if you look at how the role of politicians, how they respond, what do you see in the Estonian parliament? How do politicians respond to this growing practice of citizens' initiatives?
Well, we see different practices of committees, and I really do hope we soon will have a research about the practice. And we see that classical representative MPs are actually taking those topics seriously, and they are just trying to understand if they are too new for Estonian society, so they need more the courage, but actually they take it seriously. Unfortunately, we don't talk about too much about it in our public sphere, but this is the thing. But of course there are politicians who tell that this is not a thing at all. This is not a thing at all.
And what's the argument that they then use?
Well, it's,
or they just don't like
I don't know, it's just like not relevant,
Okay.
like it's like, but I think if the initiative is on their topic, they start to be also much more serious about the question. So if there's this political will, they use the citizen initiative as proving, look, I have the supporters here, and that is how it functions. But also we do have those new politicians, what I'm observing from the portal. I have to mention that they are more on the local level, but we have some examples also on the state level that are coming through this different career path. They are first the initiators, and then they choose if they start to be the professional politicians or they go to some advocacy organization to be the professional advocacy advisor or something like that. So successful campaigners actually have those complete new career paths in that new democratic innovations.
And would you say then also that's a kind of new generation of politicians who is more sensitive for assemblies, initiatives, and understanding?
They have been on the other side.
Yeah. Only you
yeah, that's actually interesting. The opinions of or attitudes of politicians towards citizens' initiatives, because like in Finland we have studied citizens' views on the initiative. According to that, 60% of the Finns have signed initiatives, and 70% think that the initiatives have actually improved democracy. But we don't have this kind of service for MPs and politicians on these instruments. And it would be very interesting because in Finland, in Parliament, it's difficult to say the scale of this, but there's a lot of, still quite a lot of discussion in the corridors that actually the threshold should be lifted to maybe 70,000 from the 50,000.
Why?
Yeah, well, it's the main argument is I think like it's overburdening the parliament, which is it's a bit
There's
because
7 initiatives.
yes, yeah, but on average, like in the past 5 years, there have been like from 7 to 12 initiatives in parliament submitted in parliament annually, while, for example, government proposals, which are of course the main work of the parliament, they are like 200 per year. So it's a bit difficult, and also this kind of attitude that they are sidetracking the work of the parliament a bit to wrong places, and this is kind of like the general a bit tells about the attitude towards citizen participation. And I don't want to make fun of the politicians in any way, but sometimes you hear these kind of things from representatives that why we need this participation between elections, because we already meet people.
It's a very classical discussion saying politicians we have been elected, so it's our role now to
and this kind of a bit like illusion of scale also, like who you meet in the election campaign tent or in the events that you go. But there's these kind of misunderstandings I think about the whole idea of citizen participation, and it's a kind of like positive impact.
Just very briefly, and then I want to take some more questions. Yeah.
Well, I would add here that it's the same phenomenon. That if the participation actually works, if the instrument works, it means that we will have more people who now start to participate who never did it before. So for sure they need some support there. So the quality, what they are perceiving as a quality of initiatives, that this goes down. It's very good, this thing, but then we need to support so the quality will go up again. It's not that we make threshold bigger or put some other barriers.
Yeah.
No, we should celebrate that. But it means also a lot of explaining what we need to do. We have the same thing what people have been asking, who are those people who are now in the committees? Yeah, those are the citizens who were collecting the signatures. So they are used to have those discussions in the committee with other politicians or experts or professionals, advisories. But now regular people actually are coming to the meeting of the committee. It's a completely new practice. That's why I was telling politicians need to have a support, to have the conversation with those people who are coming with their proposals, because we know that in Estonian society also the polarization is rising. So those conversations are not necessarily easy.
Yeah, and the trust in parliament is also not very high.
Yeah, it's amazing that actually those processes can rise up distrust if done right. So politicians should really think that maybe this is like way to watch more.
Yeah, because if you follow the work of the Estonian parliament in the news, you don't always get a very positive picture.
Yeah, media is another problem. Let's go in there.
Yes, I want to connect it. We were talking about the role of politicians. If we connect it, there's one question also. We already touched it a little bit, like how to keep people interested in deliberative democracy. As it was said, it's a lot of work, and in some cases, very little outcome. And let's focus for a moment specifically, for example, like to citizens' assemblies, like the last one that you were involved with Taylor here in Tallinn. That was, how many weekends did the people?
3 weekends.
3 weekends, so that's
5
like
days.
5 days, it's very intense. I was also had a chance to observe, but very engaging, and the people who were there were very engaged in this process. And do you see, like on one hand, you're saying, if we make the processes too complex or we make them, let's say, the demands for the quality too high, they become less accessible. But to have a good deliberative process, you need time. You want people to understand the topic. You help them understanding, and you want them to give them time to come up with ideas and talk with each other. Do you see a danger, Taylor, in that, let's say, if Tallinn gets a permanent citizen assembly, and that would be great. You were advocating for that. Would there be a danger that people kind of burn out in this process, or do you see examples in Ostbelgien, between Belgium and Germany? There's now a permanent citizen assembly.
Brussels.
In Brussels, that is actually
Paris.
like growing participation.
Yeah, how to get people interested. Well, there are many guidelines out there by the Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies, for example, and tricks and guides how to do it, how to keep them interested. But yeah, in Tartu and Tallinn, both cases, the local climate assemblies that we organized, we've seen that people actually, they are motivated if they see that, this is a different process than before, than we are used to. And then the first climate-related assembly that we organized in Estonia was the hardest context you can imagine in Estonia. The oil shale region next to Russia, mostly Russian-speaking, going through just transition, supported by the EU with many millions euros. And then the young people were missing from that process, from that like state-led process. And then we were like offering like, okay, we can engage young people with that format, because the young people were not organized in that region before. There was no kind of representative group or youth organization that you can call to the steering committee of this just transition. So we managed to create representation there, but that was a tough case, because these people from 16 to 29 years, they had either had no previous experience with political decision making that affects their life, or they had had a very bad experience. So to convince them, the kind of interest rate was very low in that process, but we learned a lot, and we know now, we iterate all the time, for the next processes. We know better now how to do it and all that. But still, after the youth assembly in the Ida-Viru region, they created a new NGO. They are now represented in the steering committee of the Ministry of Finance. They go to Brussels to talk about this process, and they are active on climate, raising the climate awareness in the region, and also collaboration skills. So there were so many outcomes that we didn't expect. So in a way, it starts with internal motivation, that this is different process, and in the world there are other examples, like the participants get paid, which we haven't done in Estonia. We are a rare exception, I know. So this can be one motivation, or even pay for the childcare, or if somebody is looking for, I don't know, disabled mom or something, pay for that, so that the people don't have to pay for their participation themselves. And also what we do in Estonia with assemblies, and maybe you can comment, how do you do it in Finland? The assemblies are not binding by law, or there's no like legal infrastructure for that, but we designed them as binding.
What does that mean?
We integrate with official processes, like this just transition national process. We integrate, so there's like a big process going on, and then we go in with like, hey, what if we use this format here to get the public mandate for these harsh decisions? And we also advocated for the climate law that is being drafted now in Estonia. Unfortunately, it wasn't accepted by the Ministry of Climate to use that format.
To use a citizen assembly for a climate law, you mean?
Yeah, in some phase.
Okay.
Like there are scientists, there are experts, stakeholders, there are the ministry experts also, and like everything that is set and that's running. But after a year of that process, almost everybody is disappointed in the process. So it's like, I want to say, we told you so.
Yeah. So the question that we got from one of the people in the audience saying that, like, if the process, let's say there is no clear outcome, or people invest their time, but they see that politicians are not taking it seriously, is it then kind of doing more damage to people's trust in democracy than maybe even not organizing it?
Yeah, totally can.
Yeah, it can have this effect, I believe. And then one aspect, I don't want to reject the idea of having impact. I think it's of course important, but it's interesting to see, for example, from the Citizens' Parliament, where there were 30,000 people invited and 670 participated and so on. Like how kind of like important and rewarding the processes are also for citizens as such. It's funny how people, or interesting that people make friends there and they want to have their kind of contact details for afterwards and so on. This is like one aspect. I think like if this become like very commonly used instruments and more people will be involved in the processes and I'd understand the value, that's kind of like one thing very crucial for the future of itself as well. But of course this impact cannot be like making friends is not a reason good enough for organizing this, but this is like one aspect as well.
Extra.
This kind of like extra making the whole society more deliberative and more this kind of like a bit abstract system level stuff also, like learning from each other, discussing. And
I think, I advocated for creating more trust between citizens, public servants, like institutions, like it works on many levels.
Yeah.
Well,
as we are like reaching the last 20 minutes of our
I just
discussion
pointed
here.
out again that I think it's like making friends, like it can be said like that way, but I think it's a very rare occasion when some people meet in the same room with people who think completely different. And that experience is important. Where else in our day's society, in social media, they don't meet.
Yeah. So that would be one of like an argument for really organizing more citizen assemblies. And just briefly, before we try to look maybe even a little bit further in the future, there are examples of where, let's say, citizen initiatives and citizen assemblies are part of one process. They can like highly differ from country to country, because we've talked a bit about them like a bit separate now. What do you see in Finland and Estonia? Are there examples where, or chances where these forms could be integrated as well, maybe even institutionalized in the relationship between them?
Yeah, well in
Or
Finland,
do we go then too far? Do we make it too rigid?
Yeah, in Finland we had this citizens parliament experiment that I referred to and you as an observer explained quite nicely already. So the idea was then that this citizens parliament, randomly selected and stratified, widely representative of the population, deliberated on 4 citizens initiatives.
Okay, so these initiatives came from the platform?
Yes,
the
and they reached
platform?
the threshold of 50,000 and then they were selected. But the thing is that they were selected.
So they didn't go, like, let's say, in the traditional way to the parliament, but you said, let's bring a group of citizens together to talk about these before or maybe at the same time that politicians.
Yes, and then it was connected to the committee phase of the parliamentary deliberation. Yeah. But the important aspect to highlight here, it was a deliberative poll, so James Fiskin style deliberative polling. So they didn't form like recommendations, but instead they were like surveys, polls, like beforehand and afterwards. And these kind of results were delivered to the parliament. And the topic selection was, I think you had a kind of like interesting idea that how to choose, perhaps how to choose topics for these kind of citizens' assemblies from the initiative, that there would be this kind of for and against initiatives. But in this, it was part of a research project, and there was, of course, the parliament was deeply involved as well. But the topic selection was a bit like defined by the time frame when it wanted to be organized. So basically the organizers had to look like what initiatives we have right now. And I don't think they were necessarily the best ones for the citizens' parliament, especially these initiatives on fuel taxation and diesel pricing. They
One
were
was
very
against climate goals, actually.
Yeah, and they were, because they were very technical also. So like the information provision was quite difficult, and also like in the feedback that it was a bit difficult to grasp all these technical details and so on. But the process showed, because it was also research motivated, it showed actually that people changed their opinions after, like during deliberation, and people also learn a lot about these topics.
Okay, yeah.
But then the impact on the actual parliamentary process is a bit vague. So 2 of them, like these fuel policy initiatives, have been now deliberated in the parliament, and the initiatives were rejected. And now these two on drug user rooms and legalization of cannabis have not yet been deliberated in Parliament. And after this, there will be a proper review by the researchers, like how the Parliament actually, what they thought about the process and the benefits. So this was one experiment, but I don't think this was, of course, the best setup for the process. But one idea could be maybe, like we have the threshold that maybe if citizens' initiative collects certain amount of statements of support, it would get a citizens panel, for example, to deliberate.
Okay. So
in Finland, maybe 150,000 or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
But this could be one way of choosing.
Yeah.
Or make it like a kind of like that the Parliament would have to choose like one initiative per year or something like this. I don't
For
know.
an assembly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. You wanted to?
Yeah, a bit to zoom out, like Graham Smith again, in Democratic Innovations, he refers to 6 democratic goods that any democracy innovation should deliver for the sake of legitimacy. Efficiency, transparency, popular control, considered judgment, let me think, transferability and inclusiveness. So, and I think, and he also refers to that like a single innovation cannot fulfill or deliver this. But if we combine and merge the innovations, that's then it's better. Like we get the 6 democratic goods that are there can be more, of course, but these are quite essential. This is how democratic innovations are kind of assessed.
And in the Estonian practice, working with citizen assemblies?
Well, basically, we see already this 10 years ago National Assembly was that there was like structured, like these are the topics, but then like the call for ideas or possible solutions was crowdsourced. So in a way, citizen initiatives can serve as that also. If we take, I don't know, at a certain time of moment, like what is up there, what is on the platform, or if we make a separate kind of call, like, hey, what topics are there for Estonia to solve now? You know, this can be designed as nicely as needed. Then it could be followed by a very nice and well-resourced mini-public. So to get the considered judgment from a representative group, so it's like inclusive and representative, all that, transparent. And then it could lead up to basically to a referendum even, or a preferendum.
Yeah.
And preferendum being that you have, for example, if people go voting, they choose their candidate, but they also have list of recommendations from the mini-public, and they can rate and rank these. So basically the politicians then, or the government, next government, gets this kind of assessment, public mandate, like, okay, these are the top priorities that we have to work for the coalition agreement or for like policy making. So this preferendum is actually invented by David van Reybrouck, a Belgian thinker and deliberative democrat.
Yeah. So there are different options, different chances we see for combining them. As we also like reaching the last part of our discussion and Taylor, as you said, like zooming out, if we look a little broader to, let's say, the state of democracy in Estonia, Finland, but also like let's stick to Europe, we see that, like, let's say the trust in traditional politicians is relatively low. We see growing forms of populism. We see that there is a thinking about social media, which once was this big promise, but it's also really dividing us as societies, not bringing us together. That's also one of the questions: is artificial intelligence a friend or a foe for democracy? Thinking about, let's say, the positive aspects of citizen assemblies, citizen initiatives, do we get to a point, let's say, in our democracies that maybe from before these citizen initiatives, assemblies were, as you said earlier, in the scientific world, people were experimenting with it, or they were dreaming, maybe one day we have a platform where everybody shares their ideas. Now we are at this point. Yeah, how can we say that, like in the coming future, will the role of these forums become even more important? And how can there be an answer to like growing divide in our society? I know this is a very like general question, but as we are trying to dream out loud a bit, how would that, let's say, if we stick to citizens' initiatives, how could both these platforms look in 5 or 10 years from now? More initiatives, quicker procedures, more different ways how the Finnish parliament can respond, or how do you see this?
Yeah, that's a big. First, I have to say that you refer to these kind of like very big societal challenges. I wouldn't say that democratic innovation alone is kind of like any silver bullet to these things, but yeah, I would say that either I'm a pragmatist or I lack imagination. You decide. But I'm looking still at quite the small steps, as these are kind of like still constitutionally and so on, like part of our representative democracies. And what I would like to see, for example, in the case of citizens' initiatives or also citizens' assemblies, that they would be somehow recognized as important and regular parts of our democracy, both like from the citizens' point of view, but also from the political decision makers' point of view. Like it
connects to one of the questions somebody is saying, why is there still skepticism towards
citizens' I think
assemblies, even stronger?
Yeah, one of course that we haven't said aloud is a kind of like, especially, it's like also a question of fear of losing power a bit.
Yeah.
And this kind of making this more understandable, that maybe you have to lose a small piece of your power to get help for your work that you are actually doing as a representative. That's maybe one aspect. But yeah, and also like and still I think that there's these kind of instruments, they are quite well known, but making them like regular part of a like decision-making process. That's either we talk about institutionalization or making the regular practices or so on. So that's my modest hope for the future. You can dream more.
Maria-Lena, if you look in your glass bowl, what do you see there?
Well, I see definitely a change. There's such a pressure for change. I don't know which way it will happen. In Estonia, something what was not mentioned is the processes of policymakers are going so much faster. That is concerning. Like the topics are much more complex.
You hear people in Estonia complain that society is not involved enough in consultation with new laws?
Yes, the trust of parliament and government is really, really low. Polarization is growing, so we are stabilizing democracy. So are we going to fall back or we go forward? You know, we are in this kind of point. So in that sense, we are in the different point than Finland. Because Finland is already a long time there in the democracy field. We are entering there if you see scientific work. So now if we use those innovations, maybe this can be a tool to actually get ourselves more in the other side, especially about those participation processes that are going really too fast, like green transition, digital, whatever, everything in digital is changing here. We have AI question, what is traditional, like how that will change our lives. Like, this needs more discussions, more experts involved, more informing the public. I don't see the current participation processes doing their job in the way they should kind of cross those bridges.
Yeah, the daily connection here. Sometimes living in Estonia, I almost feel that politicians are afraid that like they have such a short time frame, they think they are in power, so they're speeding up all kinds of legislative processes, forgetting to consult with society or with the business community or other groups in the Estonian society.
Which is very much against open government principles. And nobody should do that. But I would
it happens.
Zoom out even a bit more to finalize this. Maybe, democracy needs constant caretaking and innovation, But we have to separate maybe two layers. One is the fundamentals for democracy, or the prerequisites. And at the Center for Democracy, we have defined them thanks to many philosophers from the last 100 and many more 100 years, as the separation of powers, rule of law, and democratic accountability. These three guarantee an open society, so not an autocratic society. Yeah. So these have to be there in place. And in Estonia, we have problems with all of that. I think in Finland as well, because you have, in a way, we have collaborated, and we will do that more. You have also identified that a lot of resource or like energy from Finland goes to help developing countries to set up their voting systems or whatever. And this is the trend in Europe. Also, to strong democracies helping the lagging behind democracies or like new democracies, but we have forgotten about our own countries. And that's a big threat, this stagnation and like a kind of settling down with how things are and taking it as granted.
Because also Estonia is also helping other countries around
Exactly,
the world.
exactly. But we are then still quite a new democracy, not that established as Finnish one. But, so that's the foundations for democracy, and then the next layer, innovations, which mainly focus on widening or deepening citizen participation within, between elections or through elections, or however. So these two layers, in a way, we have to work at the same time. So this is a call out to anybody who feels that this kind of systemic approach is close to your heart, or your organization is doing it. Please reach out to our Center for Democracy, because we would happily collaborate, and we would like to start coordinating that kind of work here in Northern Europe first, but then anywhere in the world.
Yeah, thanks. And Oni, we're working for Sitra, having produced this report together with the partners here in Estonia. And we were talking about this long-term future. Can you say one or two practical things that you hope to reach in the coming times in Finland, either in the citizen initiatives or other aspects of deliberative democracy?
Yeah, well, one hope would be that our kind of ideas and proposals that came out of our comparative paper that we fed into the Finnish processes, that maybe some of them will be taken seriously, and the Finnish system will be developed.
Because you said this reviewing is coming up.
The problem is the lack of resources. There's a lot of good ideas, but little resources. And then the other thing, we've been now as Sitra working with, especially with the newly established regions, and we have had the round of experiments, and I hope that also when Sitra leaves and our funding leaves from these regions, that they will continue their work and build on the knowledge and abilities that they have created during these experiments. So I will work on these, that there will be lasting effect also at the regional level.
Yeah,
especially.
Because I can imagine that's still a precarious balance, that building up in Estonia, Finland, these practices that, because you can say it's great that the government can support it, or an agency can support this, bringing people together, but if it doesn't find let's say a build of practice in society itself, then as one of the people said, there is still this danger of that people step out or they don't build enough democratic experience through the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Maria-Lena, if you think now from this discussion and what you're working on with the cooperative assembly here in Estonia, what would be one or two important steps also to keep improving here in Estonia?
Well, more research.
Yeah.
We need more research. Let's say that's the big one thing.
So if you're a researcher, contact.
Yes, contact me for research in Estonia, but also in the other countries to make similar depth analysis on the both tools, the citizen initiatives and citizen assemblies, and possible future prospects, how those things can be combined in your country. Then we start to understand more those details, those things, and we can have knowledge-based development and proposals to our decision makers. Then I can be most helpful for that development.
Yeah, So we can just really go beyond this phase of like only practice-based stories, but really looking at the impact from a scientific
Yes, I think it's a good also for politicians to actually see, yes, we have proof backing up, this actually increased the trust, it brings me electorate and so on.
Yeah, agree. Any final comments?
Yes, researchers, reach out.
Okay, Onni Pekkonen from Sitra, Taylor Pack from DD Center for Democracy, and Marja-Leena Saar from the Estonian Cooperation Assembly. Thank you all three very much
Thank you.
For this discussion, and also especially the people watching us, giving your comments, giving your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't incorporate all of them, but we tried to do as many of them as possible. I believe either in a shared sheet or in the chat there's contact information from the people here. Please reach out to them if you have ideas, comments, even if they are critical. They're very important to continue this discussion about citizen initiatives, citizen assemblies, and more in general, building trust and keeping good care of the democracies that we live here in this part of the world. So thank you very much. I wish you a good continuation of the Open Government Week, and let's meet again somewhere digitally or in person. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.